Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Whoa. Is it just me? Is that really loud? Okay. It may get louder. All right, here we go. Garden of Eden, part 5, I think it is. And we're just going to break right into it. We're going to just set the stage. We're going to go back to verse 1 in chapter 3. And this is what we read. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden. Moving to verse 3. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. For God knows in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. This is where we left off in our last message. The devil has come to Eve. And I want you to note, he's come to her in a very specific way. And don't think he won't do the same to you. He has come not as an enemy, not as a villain. He's come to her as a friend. He doesn't come as an oppressor as he is. He comes as a liberator. I mean, he's come to set her free. I mean, she doesn't realize, this is what he is portraying, she doesn't realize that she's in bondage, she is shackled. She could be so much more. There's so much more for her. He is sowing discontentment into her. And listen to me, this is what the enemy does so well. I mean, this was the rise of women's liberation movement. Sowing discontentment. It's not enough that you're a housewife, that you serve your husband with godly fear, that you love and you rear your children. None of that doesn't matter. There's more. And so he comes on the scene and he starts sowing discontentment. And this is exactly what the enemy is doing to Eve. There's so much more for you. There's more wisdom. Unimaginable wisdom. In fact, Eve, you will become like God. Like God. And that's literally what it says in the Hebrew. Ke Elohim. Like God. Let me ask you a question. When is it not a good thing to be like God? I mean, aren't we as believers supposed to be like God? Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai lahechem. Be holy as I am holy. Yeshua says, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. You realize the sophistication, the deception that Eve is being presented with here? It is diabolical. I mean, this whole experience that we're seeing here, this is not a war of flesh and blood. This is dynamic spiritual warfare at its core. He hasn't come with weapons of warfare that are carnal. He didn't come with knives and swords, spears to gut her, to kill her, which is what he was after doing, which is what he is doing. He comes to her with words, very persuasive words, powerful, cunning words of manipulation. They breed death. How does Eve respond to this diabolical presentation? And really, you look at this, think of it this way, and I've read it like this when I see it. The devil has come as an angel of light. He has taken the pulpit, and he is preaching a mini sermon to Eve. This is what is really going on. Well, how does she respond to this? Moving on to verse 6. So when the woman saw, I want to stop right here. What just happened? So he tells her, he baits her, he removes the fear of God. You will surely not die. And then we come to the point, your eyes are going to be open. Come and look. Come and taste and see. You are missing out. The next thing we read is what? When the woman saw, the devil got her to turn to look at the tree as an option. And that is critical to this story. Yeshua says in Matthew 6:22, and we talked about this, the lamp of the body is the eye. If the eye is good, the whole body will be full of light. What is Yeshua teaching us about the eyes? It is the doorway to your heart. This is why David What does David say? I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. And why would David say that? Well, what was the whole experience with Bathsheba? Do you remember what happened to David? He woke up. He just happened, I guess, to wake up in the middle of night. He goes out on his rooftop, and there just happened to be a naked woman bathing. What are the odds? Not very good. Not very good. Do you not think that the enemy went and woke David and led him out to the rooftop? And what got David in trouble? He gazed down upon, and he didn't look away. He looked, and when he turned his eyes, the lamp of the body is the eyes, he saw her. Guess what? From that night forward, his life turned into a living nightmare. He let that take root. Is it fascinating? He went and gazed upon that which God forbidden. She was forbidden, exactly. Just like what we see happen in the garden. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it is forbidden. She should have never looked upon it. She should have never set her gaze on it. Should have never done it. Moving on, going in verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food. So it's interesting. She turns to go look at the tree. Now, what does she see? She sees that it's good for food, that it's pleasant to the eyes. Oh, and it's desirable to make one wise. It's interesting, this word desirable in the Hebrew is hamad. Other places, what you find it translated is covet. Covet, as in thou shalt not covet. And so she looks at this tree to cast her gaze upon it, and everything about the tree looks to breed life, not death. It's like I told you before, when Enoch looked at the tree, and he didn't see this bark that was infested with pus dripping out of it. The leaves weren't dripping maggots, and it didn't have this foul smell that induced vomiting. And when he looked at the tree of wisdom, this very tree that Eve saw, he saw exactly what Eve saw. Beautiful to behold. Beyond compare. Just unbelievable tree. Its fruit is beautiful. The tree draws you in. It's intoxicating. And this is how the devil gets us, right? On a practical level. He gets us this way because when we look at sins in our life, these things that take us away, the things that tempt us, we look at these things, we are drawn to them. We do not see death. If we knew that if we take this sin, we are going to die that very moment, that day, how many of you would immediately stop what you're doing? You would put the bottle down. You would put the drugs away. You would stop watching things you shouldn't be watching on TV. It radically transform your life. And so this is the reality. Sin, the devil, he will keep putting things of the world and the things that everyone is doing, and as they're enjoying the passing pleasures of sin, he will tell you, see, you will surely not die. There's no payment for this. And then you cast your gaze upon whatever sin it is. And when you cast your gaze upon it, it'll just take hold of you. And it will fill you. It will fill your heart full of darkness. And it will breed death. I mean, this is what it does best. This is what sin does. It kills. Amen? Sin is deceptive. And when Eve's looking at this tree, you really realize, oh my, it's a tree of deception. The whole tree is not what it appears to be. It's totally deceiving. How does Eve respond to the sight of this tree? The devil got her to cast her gaze on it. Now, what's her response? Well, then we read this at close to the end here. She took of its fruit and ate. She took it because of how it looked, because of what the devil pitched to her. You know, the devil's strategy was executed with precision. All the things that he militarily did, tactically did to Eve were brilliant. From the onslaught, coming in and calling into question the commandment of God. Oh, did God really say? I mean, did he really say that? Coming in, stripping out the fear of God. You will surely not die if you disobey God. No. reeling her in with covetousness to covet that which God has forbidden, sowing discontentment. You could be so much more. All of these things compiled that he did strategically at the perfect moment. All of them worked. You look, this is how he got Eve. And when you look at the end of the story, basically here, what did he get her to do? Bend to his will. She bent the knee to his will. Understand something about the will of Satan and his kingdom. His will is absolutely defined by a person walking away from the will of God. It's that simple. You are either in the will of God or you're in the will of Hasatan. There's no middle ground here. The Apostle Paul says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 25, in humility correcting those who are in opposition, if God will perhaps grant them repentance so that they may know the truth. And so just to set the stage here, obviously what Paul is teaching here is that when your brother goes astray, you need to go get him, but how you go get him is critical. You need to do it in humility, and the goal of going to get him is to take him out of deception and bring him into truth. This is the goal. And then we continue. And that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. That's what this is about. What is happening in the Garden of Eden? What happened every day afterward? Satan's goal is to get us to bend to his will. And all you need to do that is walk away from God. Walk away from his commandments. That's all you need to do, just to bend to his will. Going back to our passage, I want to finish this out. There's something else that is really important here, and that is right at the end. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. We discovered that the devil's plan, this is really something. His plan was so powerful, so successful, that he managed to get Eve to give to Adam and get Adam to fall without ever talking to Adam. I want you to think about that for a second. How in the world did he do that? Let me ask you a question. Do you think the adversary was surprised when Adam ate the fruit? I can't believe he did that. That's crazy. I was just talking to Eve, but now I got a 2-for-1. Have you thought through these things? Do you think the devil was shocked that Adam actually partook when he never said a word to him? The answer is absolutely not. Why? Listen to me carefully. Adam was the primary target. That's why. He was the primary target. Think about this. In a household with marriage and the construct the way God has created it, the husband is the head of the house. And if you're the enemy, you want to make the house fall, go to the head. Take out the head of the household and watch what happens to the rest of the house. This is a reality. In fact, just to build into this further, just to kind of give you insight to the fact that Adam was the primary target, I want to take you to some ancient Jewish tradition and some insight in regard to this very story. And I'm going to quote to you out of the second book of Enoch. Now, I just want to be clear, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit trail, maybe someday, but not today. This is not the book that I quote out of. When you hear me quoting about Enoch, when you hear me talking about Enoch, that is the Ethiopic Enoch. This is the Slavonic Enoch. This is a different Enoch. And just so you keep them straight, they number them. First Enoch, second Enoch. Well, this is second Enoch. Now, I'm taking you here just because I want to give you some ancient Jewish insight into this reality, into what the rabbis, what the Jewish people thought early on. And this is what we read in 2nd Enoch, and this is chapter 31, verse 5. And the devil understood his condemnation in the sin which he had sinned before. Therefore he conceived thought against Adam. In other words, the devil was musing over, I am condemned, I cannot be redeemed. He looks to see God's creation. He looks to Adam and says, that's it. I'm going to hatch a diabolical plot against him. I mean, this is ancient history here, a commentary. In such form, he entered and seduced Eve, but did not touch Adam. Now, in other words, this commentary recognizes that Adam was the primary target. The whole issue was fashioned for him. This whole mode of destruction fashioned for him. Now, this obviously raises the question, well, if Adam was the primary target, why this strategy? Right? Why go through Eve to get to Adam? Wouldn't it just make sense? If Adam's the target, I go to the target. You think about war today. If I'm going to lock my missiles on, I lock it on to the target. That makes just simple sense, right? So why go through this manner? The answer to this is simple. Had Hasatan approached Adam, his plan would have never worked. It would have never came to fruition. He would have not only not got Adam, he wouldn't have got Eve either, had he gone to Adam. And what I want to do is I want to take you to some commentary by the Apostle Paul. And this particular commentary is absolutely, it's one of the most important commentaries outside of the story itself to put this story into context. Paul makes one simple statement with profound impact for us in understanding. And so I want to take you to 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 12. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, but to be in silence. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. Now listen. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. It's one of the most important factors, principles, and realities for us to understand in regard to our story and keeping it in proper context. Adam, this is post-garden, okay? This is long after the word. Paul the Apostle, he's looking back at the story and he's recognizing Adam was not deceived. See, Hasatan knew this. He knew he just couldn't come in and manipulate and deceive him. In fact, there's some other ancient commentary on this that I think is worth looking at. This commentary comes from Rabbi Eliezer, and he's typically called Eliezer the Great. But just to make him a little more tangible to you, this particular rabbi, he lived in the 1st century. Okay? And he was actually a teacher of Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Akiva, he was involved with proclaiming Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah in the 1st century, or early 2nd century. And what happened? That led to the revolt, right, against Rome. It didn't last very long. But Rabbi Akiva is one of the greatest rabbinic sages in history, and Rabbi Eliezer was his teacher. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, he had a falling out with the rabbis of his day, not worth getting into. But one other connection that is really interesting about Rabbi Eliezer, he was actually married to the son. He wasn't married to the son. Let me be clear. He was married to the daughter of Gamliel's son. That's very tangible, because Gamliel is mentioned in Acts chapter 5. Okay? So, I mean, this really kind of brings this stuff into view here. Let me show you his commentary, because he's going to comment on what we're talking about here. The serpent argued with itself, saying, if I go and speak to Adam, I know that he will not listen to me. For a man is always hard to be persuaded. But behold, I will speak to Eve, for I know that she will listen to me, for women listen to all creatures. Now, let's be honest, women. There's one thing that I've understood in many years of marriage, and just by being a part of a community, and that is this. Men are generally not good listeners. Women are excellent listeners. This is just a reality. The enemy, looking at this, recognized the differences. He made a distinction between male and female. Despite our society blurring the lines today, the devil didn't blur the lines. He realized God made us differently. Okay? He made us differently. And the enemy knew this, and unfortunately, he utilized this for his advantage. And so, simple point I want you to see here is the rabbi is making the same point that the Apostle Paul really is getting across. For Hasatan to come to Adam, it's not a viable plan. And we could take it further. If he came at him, he couldn't come at him with swords and spears and knives. I mean, physically, to literally gut him. Why? He didn't have the authority. Okay, you start adding this together, start adding this all up, and what you discover is Adam is untouchable. Think of this. He is untouchable. But the devil, in his wisdom, in his craftiness, guess what? He found a way in. He found a soft spot. The devil understood that Eve had this special connection with him, a connection where she had special access into his heart that, guess what? He didn't have. He did not have this access, but Eve had full access to his heart. The devil saw that she had a very, very unique ability to impact and influence him. And if he wants to go after Adam, he wants to take him down, there's only one mode of operation. There's only one way to do it. He's got to go through his wife. And women, listen to me carefully. If you think that this message is going to show that women are the weak link and they're the cause for all the world's problems, that is not true. That is not what this is about. If that's kind of the vein that you're going down to, abandon ship right now. Because there is a lesson here, women, that I'm going to tell you it's one of the most important lessons you'll learn in this age. That we're supposed to be drawing from this story. And that is this. You have a connection with your husband that is so powerful. Not to be underestimated. You have this unique ability to influence him in ways that nobody else in this world can. Except outside of the Lord himself. This is the power that you wield, the rise and fall of your homes. They can depend on how you wield this power. I want you to think about it. You can take this power and you can use it for good. You can start speaking to your husband, pushing him closer to Yeshua, encouraging him to walk in righteousness. Or you can utilize this power to facilitate the destruction of your home. This is the reality. And I'm going to tell you, what we see happening in the garden doesn't end in the garden. It plays out over and over and over again all throughout Scripture. There's something going on here. There's something here that we're supposed to be picking up on. Let me give you a couple examples. Because I want you to see that the devil, he has developed a system of attack that is so vile, that is so cunning. He has turned this system into a killing machine. I mean, it's brutal. Let me give you some examples. Going to Deuteronomy 7, Moses, he's warning the children of Israel. They're coming into the land, and he tells them, don't you dare start making marriages with the women of the land. Okay, pagan women. He doesn't talk about fornication. Okay? He says, don't make marriages, taking them as wives. Now listen, why? This is why. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods, so the anger of the Lord will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. Understand this. The Lord understood how much power wives have on their husbands, how influential they can be. I mean, this is the reality that we're being taught here. And obviously, there's another lesson. Men, single men, don't you dare enter into a marriage being unequally yoked. You do not know the power the devil, the enemy, will utilize this person to take you down. Do you not think that as Israel's coming in the land, and the one thing at the top of Satan's list to do is to destroy Israel? Do you not think that he's going to attempt to get them to make marriages to wives that are unequally yoked, but have full access to their hearts? You would be mistaken. You would be sadly mistaken, because a perfect example of this, we don't have to go very far. We see King Solomon. King Solomon. And I'll put this in context. The wisest men that ever lived. Anointed king over Israel, the greatest nation that has ever inhabited this earth. Wisest men that ever, people came from all over the world to hear his wisdom. The most highly and decorated king the earth has ever known outside of Yeshua. We've never seen anything like it. Solomon, he spoke to the Lord. The Lord spoke to him. The Lord answered his prayers by fire. Think of who this man is. I'm pretty sure I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, if we were to put all of us men together here, we don't equal a Solomon. I know that. And yet, the wisest man, do you think Satan wants to take him out? Do you think he wants to go after the kingdom of Israel? Do you think he wants to kill Solomon? Absolutely. How did he do it? Women, wives. His wives turned his heart, not fornication. His wives turned his heart from serving the living God. That's Satan's in. He saw it. He has access because they have access to his heart. I mean, this is a really powerful lesson. It's scary. 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 25, for there is no one like Ahab who sold himself to do wickedness in the sight of the Lord because Jezebel, his wife, stirred him up. Think about that. Here again, we see the enemy coming through the wife to corrupt, to pervert, to destroy. This is how he works. Following on the footsteps of this, 2 Kings verse 8:18. And Jehoram walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. Explicitly stating his wife was central to him walking in the ways of the kings of Israel. Access. This was the enemy working through this wife. What about Samson? How did the devil get to Samson? And remember Samson, remember the context of this. The devil had oppressed Israel for 40 years through the hands of the Philistines. The devil had authority over them. Until the Lord is going to have mercy, he raises up Samson, a Nazarite from birth, called by God to be a deliverer. You think maybe the enemy would want to come in and destroy him? Who's going to release Israel from his grip, from his bondage? Absolutely. We see in Judges 16, verse 4, afterward it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, entice him and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. That was the mouth of the adversary. This is what he has come to do, to bind and afflict, to torment. He is vile. He doesn't show mercy. He wanted access to Samson. It wasn't going to happen head on. He had to become more sophisticated, more cunning in his approach. And so he brings Delilah to the table. In verse 6, we read this. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you may be bound to afflict you. You want to talk about the mouth of Hasatan speaking directly through the woman, having direct access into his heart. Direct access. I want to bind you. And it's amazing. Samson responds, not truthfully. Yeah, tie 7 bowstrings on me. Fresh bowstrings. And I'll become as weak as any man. Oh, okay, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He breaks them like they were nothing. She gets upset. You mocked me. Tell me where your great strength lies. The enemy is pursuing. He doesn't give up. He comes back again. He's like, well, you tie new ropes on me. That'll work. How'd that work? It didn't. He broke those 2. As soon as she said, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He does it a 3rd time. It doesn't work. And then we come to this moment in verse 15. Then she said to him, how can you say you love me when your heart is not with me? Isn't that sweet? I mean, she's just coming, pulling on his heartstrings, that access into his heart. She is tugging at it. The enemy is tugging at it with everything he's got. And he's being relentless. You have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart. The point being is the devil took Samson out. And he did it through his wife. Or he did it through Delilah. There's debate whether she was married to him or not. What about the story of Balaam and Balak? We could just keep going. Right? Balak comes to Balaam, come and curse Israel. It's the enemy of Satan. Come and curse Israel. Balaam tells, I can't. Because, Balak knows whatever he blesses is blessed, and what he curses is cursed. He's got great power. And he tells him, I can't curse Israel. God has blessed, and I cannot reverse it. Who am I? I can't do this. You know what's fascinating about that story? Here you find out Israel, like Adam, was untouchable. The devil had no access. He couldn't touch them. Then what happens? Just read in the story. The next thing we read is Israel's being cursed. They were untouchable. How? The enemy brought Moabite women in. He brought Moabite women in, and the children of Israel, these Moabite women had special access to their hearts, and they led them to start worshiping false gods. Exactly what Deuteronomy warned would happen. But this is the enemy behind the scenes. Don't just look at this in the physical realm. These are just pretty girls that are running around, and the Israelites couldn't help themselves. This is demonic. This is sensual, and this is demonic. There is a ploy to steal, kill, and destroy. If we could see in the spiritual realm, my oh my, this world would be a much different place. This is what I want you to take away, women. This is not about you being a weak link. This has nothing to do with that, or you being the problem, men's problems. That couldn't be farther from the truth. What would we do without you? The Lord knew that from the get-go. That's why you were created. This is the takeaway. The devil is looking to use you. And you need to make note of this. That's all this is about. That's what this story, this is what you should be drawing from this, as the devil is looking for the opportunity for you to give him, to get into your husband's heart and to destroy your home. And like I said, you have great power. You can wield it for good. You can resist him. I mean, we can talk about all, here we're talking about how Satan used all these women, but what about all the righteous women in Scripture that held the line? What about Sarah, who advised her husband, who the Lord had to come in later and say, listen to your wife. She's right. What about Ruth? Talk about a woman of God building into her house, resisting the enemy. Powerful. What about Esther? Esther saving an entire nation because she was diligent. She didn't destroy her people. I mean, we could go on and on. Rahab. Talk about the honor that Rahab brought to her house. They lived, her family lived because of the decision she made because she was godly. That's the power that you women have. But be very, very careful. And make no mistake, you are already deceived if you believe the devil isn't coming for you. He is coming to destroy your home, and he's going to attempt to use you. Don't let him. Don't let him. Now, getting back to our story in verse 6, something else I want to look at right at the end, going back to the final statement here. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. I want to take the focus off of Eve. I want to shift it to Adam. The reality is every one of us know Adam should have never eaten. Despite Eve bringing this to him or not, it's irrelevant. He was called to tend and to keep, to protect. Shamar in the Hebrew. He was called to protect the garden. He was called to protect his house. He's the spiritual leader. He had an obligation. He had a responsibility to resist. When you look at scriptural commentary on this story, you look at the Apocrypha, okay? Both of it. The sin is not ascribed to the woman. The sin is ascribed to Adam. Let me give you an example of this. In 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says, "For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Mashiach all shall be made alive." Notice it doesn't say, for by Eve, by woman came death. You won't find that. It's not as in Eve all die. Adam is the one historically held responsible. The sin, the responsibility is laid on him. That is very clear. And I'm not going to put stuff up from the Apocrypha. I could. But all the ancient literature looking at this, Adam's the one. It falls on him. Men, what do you learn from this? You are without excuse. Whatever's going on in your house, I promise you this. Start walking away from the Lord and watch what happens to your house. Watch what happens. I want to move into the closing. I want to close on a light note. I like to do that. And I want to peel back a completely different layer to this story. I mean, I want to talk about shifting gears here. I want to go back to the story and look at it in a completely different manner. Not even the same. So we're going to have to kind of shake things up, shake in your seat or something, wiggle your head. Whatever you got to do, we got to scratch everything, because what I want to do is I want to approach this in a typological manner. In other words, I want to go back and I want to see, is there any typology in verse 6, this one verse that we covered today? Is there any typology that exists? Because what we've already discovered as we're looking at this garden experience, that there is absolutely no question. I mean, the Apostle Paul comes right out and says, Adam, in chapter 5 of Romans, Adam is a type of the Messiah to come. I mean, this is what he tells us. So we already know there's typologies there. We already know there's evidence of this in inspired commentary. You have Luke calling Adam the Son of God. We have all these interesting that he's called, there's the first Adam, and then there's the last Adam. Yeshua's called the last Adam for a reason. And then we were looking, in the weeks past, we were looking at the fact that this relationship between Adam and Eve, this marriage, it mirrors the marriage between Yeshua and the church, between Yeshua and Israel. It mirrors that. So there are things here that are worth gleaning from. Well, I want to go back and I want to see if there's anything here that we can draw away from on a typological level. And my argument is there is, and it's very strange. And you'll see what I mean. But going back to Genesis 3:6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And again, highlighting this last verse, this is where I want to focus. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. I want to be very clear on something because, I had someone actually come up to me and ask me about this. She gave to her husband with her. Some people had the understanding that, well, Adam was standing right there. What a bumbling idiot. He was standing right there the whole time watching the devil deceive his wife. That is actually not true. That's not true at all. In fact, the context of the story itself doesn't allow for that, and even later commentary in the New Testament doesn't allow for that. Adam was not present. The enemy, Hasatan, came in at the opportune time when she was alone. He's not stupid. He's not foolish. He's working an angle. See, Adam was not deceived. If you're going to tell me Adam was standing right next to Eve when this happened, he would be deceived. He's not deceived. And furthermore, as we get deeper into the story, you'll see that this bears it out. So the first thing that I want to mention here is that when it's saying that she also gave to her husband with her who ate, it means who was with her in the garden. This is their place of habitation. Second thing that's really interesting about this, it's not what is recorded here, it's what isn't recorded. In other words, there's no dialogue whatsoever. All I know is that she took this, she had a conversation with the devil. she goes over to the tree, she grabs its fruit, and the next thing I know, well, then she gave it to her husband and ate. What happened in between that? Did you ever think about what was the dialogue? I mean, did Eve come around and say, oh, hi, honey. I'm home. Just what you been doing, honey? Well, I was out talking to the serpent today, and I just picked up some fruit on my way back. Why don't you try some? Why don't you try some fruit? It's really good. Delicious. You should have seen the tree. Beautiful. What happened? I mean, this is the mystery. What went down? What was said? It's vital. I mean, this is vital information. Everybody wants to know about this. And there's commentaries after commentaries musing what happened. What happened in this gap period? There's a gap. Well, let me take you to let's go back to Rabbi Eliezer for a second. Listen to, we're going to build on this. The serpent went and said to the woman, behold, I touched the tree, but I did not die. Thou also mayest touch it, and thou wilt not die. The woman went and touched the tree, and she saw the angel of death coming towards her and said, woe is me. Okay, I shall now die, and the Holy One, blessed be he, will make another woman and give her to Adam. But behold, I will cause him to eat with me. If we shall die, we shall both die. And if we shall live, we shall both live. Fascinating commentary. It's interesting because basically just the simple breakdown is Eve's looking at this. She saw the angel of death go, I'm doomed to destruction. There's no way I want to lose my husband. There's no way I want him to have another wife. I'm it. I do not want him to make another woman. So and here's the reality. There's a motivation we're seeing here. We're seeing some motivation of Eve has motivation to bring this fruit to get her husband to eat. And this statement is it's very enticing. What's said, what's highlighted. If we shall live, we shall both live. What a peculiar thing to say. One thing that I know for sure, and I want you to think about this. This is concrete. This is not, loose commentary. This is my insight. This is a concrete, this is a fact. And we got to bring it back to the table. Adam was not deceived. Okay, this is the New Testament inspired commentary on this. You can take it to the bank. You have to contend with this issue in the context of this story of knowing Adam was not deceived. Well, let me ask you a question. If Adam wasn't deceived, what does that mean? He was willing. I mean, just think about this. Follow this to its logical conclusion. If Adam wasn't deceived, he willingly, according to his will, he went forth and ate the fruit, right? Despite, he knew the consequences. I want you to think about that. Get your wheels turning. He knew the consequences. Now, on a typological level, could it be that Adam had done this, that his love would have been so strong for his wife, he was willing to eat the fruit despite death? This is an interesting thought only when you consider the life of Yeshua, when we're just simply looking at this at a typological level. See, when I look at the life of Yeshua, what I see is someone who came, who knew the consequences, and he was willing to die for his wife, for Israel. This is the reality. And it's interesting, in John chapter 10, he says, no one takes my life from me. I give it of my own accord. He willingly gave it. Let me take you to Hebrews chapter 2. Something interesting is said here. But we see Yeshua, who is made a little lower than the angels for suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone. What did Adam do in the garden? He tasted the fruit, which he knew brought death. And this is what Yeshua did when he came on the scene. Take it a step further in 2 Corinthians Chapter 5, verse 21. For he made him who knew no sin, to be sin for us. Well, make no mistake, in the Garden of Eden experience, Adam became sin. Now, let's be clear, on a literal level, when we come here on a literal level, Adam failed. Adam sinned. This is not our Messiah. Yeshua succeeded where he didn't. But on a typological level, and in typology, let me be clear, typology is not this perfect science, because David is a typology of the Messiah to come. But you look at everything he did, with all due respect, the whole Bathsheba thing has nothing to do with our Lord. Solomon, one of the most profound typologies of Yeshua anywhere in Scripture. It's unbelievable. It's pages and pages of parallels that show, that reveal the Messiah. Yet, look at what he did with his 1,000 wives. That's not the deal. The point being is that you start thinking about this story, you start thinking about Adam, you start thinking about this dialogue that happened, and no, we don't have anything concrete for him. But one thing I know is Adam was not deceived. There was a willingness. He willingly ate this fruit. And that aspect is a parallel to Yeshua coming, who willingly, he took our sin. He became sin for us. You just think of these concepts, powerful, very powerful. We're going to close here today.